This is the Thrifty Pilot Podcast, where we discuss everything aviation, tips, tricks, and safety without breaking the bank.
Well, welcome to the Thrifty Pilot's third podcast. We are on fire, and we are actually joined here today by Trevor Heath. Super excited about this. Trevor, thanks for joining us. Trevor is an experienced GA pilot, having time in multiple types of aircraft, and has been involved in aviation for about as long as I've known him. He is also the founder of Young Aviators, Incorporated. This is an organization set up to educate and promote opportunities and career paths in the aviation industry to students, parents, school counselors, and the public. Trevor, I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day to sit with me and discuss a little bit more about yourself and your organization.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, not a problem. Like I said, I'm super excited. I've known you for a while, and I know that you share the love of aviation that I have. And just have a few questions and thought that I would take the time. First of all, I want to know a little bit more about you, Trevor. Like, how old were you when you first started in aviation, and what was it that sparked your interest in it?
Going back to when I was about 6 or 7 years old, that's when I really started to remember having an interest in aviation. I've got a little bit of a family background in aviation, though I am the first generation pilot in my family. Both my dad and his father were Virginia Air National Guard firemen for the better part of their careers.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather on my mom's side was chief of operations at Richmond International for 31 years, retiring in 1999. So I've been around aviation for a while. My mom also used to be an accountant on the payroll side for Richmond International Airport. So even just with Richmond International, there's a lot of experience there as well. So I've been exposed to it for the better part of my entire life, and before I was even born. But as far as professionally starting my career, when I was about 16 years old, still a junior in high school, I started looking into beginning flight training. Took my first flight lesson in May of 2015 at the Hanover County Airport in Ashland, Virginia, in a Tecnam P-92 Eaglet. It's a little two-seater light sport plane. And about not quite a full year after that, I soloed in April of 2016. And then I got my license in September of 2017. I've got about 200 hours right now. Been flying for quite some time as far as a young pilot would be considered. And I've got experience in planes from light sports and Cessnas up to business class jets, turboprops.
Yeah, some of the stories that you've told me, I'm jealous, I'll be honest with you. Trevor told me a story that he flew down with a pilot buddy of his in a very large aircraft, probably the largest aircraft that a GA pilot can fly. What was that aircraft that you were flying around that you were telling me about?
So one of them was a Piper Meridian, 2014 Piper Meridian. The first flight I took with the guy, he wanted to just test his GPS out, so we flew out of Richmond, went down to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, shot an approach, and then came back. I hand flew the plane at 12,000 feet all the way there and all the way back. Took only about 52 minutes round trip, so that was a lot of fun. And then roughly 2 or 3 weeks after that, he invited me on one of his business trips to fly out to Illinois to a couple different stops with him, overnight and come back the next day. So I logged between those 2 trips and then an additional trip out to Illinois. I've got about 9 hours in Piper Meridian alone. And I've also got a little bit of experience in a Premier jet. Flew that down to Charleston Executive, South Carolina, and back. So I've got a little bit of turbine time under my belt for a private pilot. But
I tell you, for the time that you have flown quite a few different things. And like I said, I'm quite jealous. So majority of the time, general aviation pilots, work their way up to the Cessnas and maybe get up to the SR-22s or something in the Cirrus line. I mean, in 200 hours, you've hit the epitome. So I'm pretty excited about that for you.
Thank you.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the Young Aviators? Like, what is that group, and just tell me more about Young Aviators in general. Let the people know what's going on here.
Okay. Back in about the spring of 2018, I came up with the idea of trying to connect some of the young aviators in the state of Virginia, mostly pilots. That's typically the biggest population in aviation around here. Just creating a social platform on Instagram and then eventually Facebook for Virginia pilots that are roughly 25 years old and younger to network, meet each other, maybe do some fly-ins and things like that. Just start building a network. And then in the latter part of 2018, first few weeks of December, I decided I wanted to make it into a nonprofit and even take it to the national level. And in the very early portion of 2019, the first week of January, we filed or submitted the paperwork to be filed as a nonprofit in the state of Virginia as Young Aviators Incorporated. We have since gotten some representation from other young pilots who want to help the organization grow in 23 other states in the country in a matter of just 3 or 4 weeks. We plan to grow this organization as quickly as we can and start to benefit the general public on the aviation side of things. A brief background on kind of how it got started and what the mission of it is. Young Aviators was started by myself. I then got in touch with originally 6, now 8 people who comprise the board of directors for the organization. The oldest person on the board is 21. The youngest is 14.
Wow.
So it's a youth organization that's run by youth.
Outstanding.
So that's something I'm very proud of. All of the directors except for one are residents of the state of Virginia. We do have one that is based in North Carolina. And then we hope to eventually grow pretty quickly to where we can have some directors on the state level in each state across the country. And then the mission for Young Aviators is to promote, as stated in the beginning, to promote and educate opportunities and career paths in the aviation industry for students and future pilots, air traffic controllers, business professionals, anything in the aviation industry. It's not just for pilots, it's for everyone. And just being able to provide a free or cheap service to interest people and get them involved and help them get their foot on the ground and get rolling with the industry.
That's really awesome.
So it's been a fast-rolling organization in the last month and a half, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, you see all of these things on Facebook and social media about pilot shortages and what's going on with the airlines, and you see it in the news. And do you feel like there aren't enough people interested in aviation right now to fill that gap? Like, what is as a young aviator yourself, what is the climate out there for young people trying to get into aviation? Do you feel like there's not enough out there?
I don't think the industry lacks interest whatsoever. I think some of the major challenges that aviation faces is mostly the expense of getting started in a career in aviation, especially for pilots. There's a lot of prerequisite training that has to be done before you can even begin your first flying job. I mean, the average pilot is looking at anywhere from 250 to 500 hours before they can get their first decent paying flying job. And you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars in training costs to even get to that point. So it's not easy starting off, especially for someone who's still in high school or college when they're starting their flight training. It's not financially easy for the average American citizen to obtain a pilot's license. I don't believe that there's a lack of interest, though. I would say there is a continuing push by many national aviation organizations and companies and airlines and aviation universities to spark an interest in youth that maybe just don't have a lot of knowledge of the industry. But one of the things this organization strives to do is to mostly focus on youth rather than the population of the country as a whole, and bringing people into the industry, giving them more information than them having to go out and look for it themselves, getting into public and private schools at the lowest ages that we can, especially middle and high school, when kids are starting to figure out what they may want to do for their lives, and opening up the opportunity and the ideas of an aviation career for youth. And then one of the ways that we really want to be able to give back to the community is aviation professionals who are already well into their career or well off enough into their career that they can give back, such as flight instructors, pilots, air traffic controllers that are willing, and designated pilot examiners with the FAA have already expressed an interest of volunteering their time or doing so for very, very low cost to help train and provide exposure to the industry to youth.
Gotcha. Man, that is absolutely amazing. So it's really, it's not the want, or it's not the drive. The drive is there, right? It's just expensive, and the time that you have to put into it. I mean, you're a pilot with over 200 hours right now, and I know that you fly all the time. It's hard to build those hours. So I can definitely see that, and I've been through it myself. Every hour you feel it. So you earn those hours. So when you were trying to obtain your pilot's license, maybe you can help others, because I know that there's somewhat a fear. I had a fear myself that I maybe not, I wasn't good enough. I didn't know math very well. I couldn't calculate things. There was the time aspect. Was there any obstacles that you had to approach in obtaining your license that you can maybe discuss to help others get over that initial feeling like, I just can't do it?
Definitely. Myself included, I have not met a single pilot who has told me they had no issues in obtaining their licenses. Every pilot has different issues, and some of them have the same issues as others. 9 times out of 10, you're going to have the same issues that others had in your training. A lot of the hurdles that I had to get over outside of obviously paying for flying, there were certain maneuvers that took me longer to grasp. Learning to land an airplane over and over and over again took, I would say, the better part of 100 or more landings before it finally just eventually clicked. And I understood what needed to be done to safely and effectively land an airplane. I knew what needed to be done, but being able to do it without the assistance of my instructor and repetitively do it time and time again took a lot of practice. Another big struggle that I faced was, I'm not a very big math or science person.
Yeah.
I'm very hands-on, but when it comes to especially math and science, it's not my strong suit. I don't personally believe, through my few years of experience, that it is a huge thing that a person needs to have in order to be a pilot. As long as you have basic knowledge and basic understanding, you'll be fine. I was also someone who, I have no issue understanding the concept of many things, but when it comes to being given a written test, and every license you go for in aviation has a test you have to take, I'm not a great test taker. Now, I still pass with flying colors on my written exams, but it took a lot of studying, a lot of time and effort, meeting with my instructor over and over and over again, going over stuff until it was ingrained in my head. But, I mean, I was an average student in high school. I still consider myself an average student in college. I still have a high GPA. I take my grades seriously, but I'm not a straight A student. I'm not a 4.0 student, and I would feel like I'm doing pretty well in the industry for my age. But you're going to face hurdles. You're going to face challenges. And the biggest thing is convincing yourself to keep pushing through it and just overcome those challenges. Because there was a lot that I faced. There's maneuvers that I just could not grasp a hold of for numerous flights. And then it's just one day it clicks and you don't understand why. It's just, it happens.
You just got to push through, huh?
But pushing through it, just never give up. That mentality will get you through it for sure.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing for me is just to get started, to really just tell myself that, hey, I could do this. I can do this. Let's do it.
Be confident in yourself for sure.
And just diving in and doing what you can do to be the best you can possibly be. So,
and it's a fun process. You're going to put in a lot of work for it, but it's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun.
I tell you what, speaking of the process, I know that's kind of something that not a lot of people know about, and they may be interested in aviation. Mm-hmm. And I think that might have been some of the reason that I was a little apprehensive, because I wasn't really aware of what this process was. I knew at the time that, you fly around with an instructor, and then something may happen. He jumps out of the plane. I have no idea after that. So maybe you can be a big help by telling our listeners what the process was that you went through to actually obtain. You have a private license, correct? A private pilot's license, mm-hmm. Is that? Okay. So what was the process for you? What did you go through to actually obtain that certificate, or certificate rather?
There are many different ways that you can approach obtaining your private license. However, under federal regulations, there's considered to be two different styles of training that you can go through. That's Part 61 and Part 141. Part 61, in general, if you want to look at it this way, the way in which you go about fulfilling the requirements set by the government to obtain a license is up to you and the instructor on what you want to do during that block of flight time that you've got. 141 is a structured program that was designed by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, with a structured written process that the instructor follows in a very guided course towards obtaining a license. The upside to doing Part 141 training is it does reduce the amount of time to obtain the license. So for a private pilot, if you do Part 61, you can obtain the license at a minimum of 40 hours of flight training. The national average is much higher than that, looking at around 50 to 70 hours, but that's also ranging from the teenage time frame that people normally get started, and even people upwards in their 60s and 70s that are getting started. So the national average is somewhere between 50 and 70 or 50 and 80 hours. But especially if you're getting started, the younger you can get started, the better. It's just easier for you to grasp the concepts of flight training when you're younger. The other thing, for me, I did not do the Part 141 FAA structured program. I do not attend an aviation university. I'm attending a regular public institution, getting a non-aviation degree. And there's no requirement for you to go and get an aviation degree to be in aviation. Mine is a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Studies with a focus in public relations. It does not necessarily have anything to do with aviation, but a lot of the stuff that you would learn in that degree or in any other degree, you can use in aviation in some way, shape, or form. And it's also not a bad idea to have a backup. So when it comes to, especially if you're young and getting started, and you really haven't gotten into college, or you might be thinking about going back to college, you could go Part 141 and go through an institution that has an aviation program. There's the big names like Embry-Riddle, Liberty University, University of North Dakota, and then there's some smaller ones in each state as well that aren't necessarily as well known, but they're still as equally as important as the bigger names. I did all of my training at a private flight school in Ashland, Virginia. I got my private pilot's license there. I'm working on my instrument and my commercial there right now. Working on my advanced ground instructor instrument certificate as well. So staying busy. But there's no one set way to get started in this industry. It's just wherever you're at, go find the nearest flight school. Watch some YouTube videos of people who are already in the industry. Ask people who are already in the industry questions. Get their opinions. Don't take one opinion as the only option. Get many. Look at your options. Look at your opportunities. If you have questions, I don't know a single flight school that I can think of that will charge you to go and ask questions.
Yeah, I can
Call your local flight school, ask for a free consultation to obtain a license, and they'll schedule you for a 15, 30, 60-minute block to sit down and just talk and let you just ask any kind of question you can think of. And like I said, there's no one set way to begin your training. I did all of mine privately. It took me a few years to get it because I was doing it through high school. I was paying for it myself. So I wasn't flying 5 times a week as a full-time aviation student. I was flying once or twice a week, and then over the summer I flew a lot more. The winter into my senior year I had to take a few months off of flying. So that delayed my training process a little bit. But the biggest thing is just doing some personal research, seeing what your locality around you offers, and just getting started.
Fair enough. Good deal. So that's interesting that you brought up the different types of license or certifications that you can obtain. So private pilot, and then you have the commercial, and then help me out with the different certifications. And maybe because that's, again, something that's somewhat confusing, and I get a lot of questions about, hey, James, I'm interested in becoming a airline pilot. I heard about this commercial certification that I can get. Do I just need that and I'm ready to go? Well, maybe you can explain a little bit more since you've got the history here of what those are.
The typical pilot is going, if you want to make a career out of aviation, or you want to do more than just fly around in circles for fun, which a lot of people do. They do it. It's just something that they enjoy doing. It's not their career. But if you want to make a career in aviation, the easiest thing to do is you have to go for your private pilot's license first. That's the initial license you go for. After that, typically the best route to take, and you don't have to take it in this specific order, the best route, most effective route, and cost-effective route to take is once you obtain your private, you go and add on your instrument rating. It's going to take about the same amount of time as it did to get that rating as it did to get your private license. You're looking at about the same amount of hours. It might take you, some people 3 to 6 months, some people 12 months, 18 months. It just depends on how much time you can commit to it and how long it takes you to grasp the concepts. Once you obtain your instrument rating, most people go and obtain their commercial pilot certificate. And as you go up in your certificates, it opens your privileges up as a pilot more and more. Your commercial certificate, at a bare minimum, will state that you are now eligible to be paid to fly an airplane. Now, there's a lot of limitations to go along with that would need to be researched, but in general discussion, a commercial pilot certificate gives you the ability to be paid to be a pilot. In terms of if you're going for the airlines, once you've gotten your private, your instrument, and your commercial out of the way, it is smart to go ahead and get your multi-engine add-on. That typically does not take but a handful of hours to obtain. It's an add-on rather than what would seem like a full-on license. So you still have a written test to take. You still have to do a check ride. But it takes a lot less time to get that. Once you get your multi-engine, it would be a good idea to go ahead and get your certified flight instructor certificate. That then allows you to teach people to fly airplanes. It's not the only thing that you can do, and it's not the only thing you have to do, but it's a very, very smart thing to do. Once you start instructing students, a lot of the concepts that you kind of understand, but you also kind of don't understand, will start to make a lot more sense. You'll start understanding a lot more of why the federal regulations are the way that they are when you're going out there and you're teaching it to students and explaining the processes to them. And then it's just a matter of time building at that point. Then once you get to around 1,000 hours, if you went through an aviation institution, you can get what's called a restricted ATP, a restricted airline transport pilot license. And that gives you quite a number of benefits as a what would be considered a paid pilot, a commercial pilot. Typically, if you're going for the airlines, you have to have an ATP certificate. If you're going to work for a charter company, whether that be a big one such as NetJets or Wheels Up, or a local charter company in your hometown. For example, there's a couple in the Richmond area. There's quite a few in the state of Virginia alone. They typically don't require an ATP certificate to begin flying with them. you typically have to have a commercial and a multi-engine certificate under quite a handful of hours. And they'll start you off getting you trained and building time. And then once you reach a certain point and you can go for your ATP, then you would go for your ATP. And your airline transport pilot's license is treated just the same as any other certificate you go for. There's still a check ride you have to do. There's still a written test you have to take. There's minimum requirements that you have to meet. But once you have your ATP, that makes you eligible in the airline's case to become an airline pilot. And typically you're going to have to start off in the regional airlines. In today's market, February 2019, you're going to have to start off in the regional airlines 90% of the time.
So what's the difference between a regional airline, as some may not recognize this term, and any other type of airline, like a major hauler? Like what's the difference there? So
in the United States, there's the two different classifications between the major airlines and the regionals, as you would commonly hear. The major airlines consist of American, Delta, United, Southwest, and JetBlue. Those are basically, or what they would call the 5 legacy carriers in the U.S. They're the major airlines. There are some that are not regional airlines that are technically considered major airlines. They're just not as well known. But especially American, United, Delta, and Southwest, those are your big 4, really. They have a lot of companies that are either owned by the major airline or that are contracted out through the airline. So you may fly on a plane that's got Delta Airlines written on the side of it, and it's got 2 seats on one side and 1 seat on the other, but it's not operated by Delta pilots.
Yeah.
So some of the regional airlines you would hear of are Republic Airways, Piedmont, PSA, Envoy, ExpressJet, Endeavor. All of those are regional carriers that are either wholly or subsidiarily owned through the major airlines. So you typically start working through them. A lot of those airlines have got flow processes. So when you begin flying for them, you build some time and some seniority with their company. And then you can actually flow directly into the main line with the majors for whichever company that they fly for. Your pay will go up. The aircraft size you're flying will go up, sometimes fairly significantly. And then it's all uphill from there. And you can make a very, very decent career as an airline pilot.
Outstanding. I really appreciate you explaining that, because, that's part of the whole process that kind of goes, unknown to my people on the outside. And it's nice to provide clarity. So a follow-up to that is with Young Aviators, how young can you be to actually be an aviator, an actual pilot, right? And with that, what can a younger person do to get involved in aviation? So maybe you can help us out with that.
The industry and the federal government does not have a requirement to begin training. You can, under technical terms, you can begin learning how to fly an airplane at any age, provided you can effectively and safely operate the airplane. So obviously you wouldn't want to stick a 3 or 4 year old in the cockpit of a plane and let them start flying around. But once a person, and even if you have to use some seat cushions to kind of sit you more forward in the seat, once you can safely put your feet and your hands on all of the control surfaces of an airplane, no matter what age you are, you can begin learning how to fly. You have to be at least 16 to solo, which is when an instructor will sign you off saying that you can safely and effectively operate an airplane without the assistance of an instructor. You can safely land the aircraft, and that in the case of an emergency or an engine failure, you can safely bring the airplane back to the ground without the assistance of someone else. And you can do that on and after your 16th birthday. And then as well, in order to obtain your license, your first license, your private pilot's license, once your 17th birthday rolls around, then you can go for your check ride to get your private pilot's license. And I know quite a few people that they had started flight training when they were 14 or 15 years old. The day they turned 16 or within a few days, they got their solo taken care of, and the day of or a couple days after they turned 17, they got their private license taken care of. So they've had a lot of fun with that. It's been fun getting to watch them through their journey as well. Kind of helping to mentor them a little bit, give them some advice. But those are the two basic age requirements you'll face. And then later down the road, you can get your commercial license once you turn 18. And then it's all uphill from there.
Wow, that's outstanding. To just have gotten your, in most states, your driver's license at age 16 and then have the ability to command an aircraft at the age of, 16/17 is pretty amazing. But it lets you also know that it's doable. There's people out there that have done it. And as long as you have that mindset, like you said, it's definitely possible. So pretty wild. With the Young Aviation group and yourself, what are you guys doing to assist with bringing more people actually into aviation? I want to know a little bit more about that, because we've definitely talked up aviation, but we need to know how you guys are actually helping with that.
So, like I said in the earlier part of this conversation, we are a youth-led organization. The oldest person running this is 21, and we wanted to keep this organization run by youth because we feel it's more appealing to a younger person to have someone that they feel that they are closer to, that they have an actual chance of reaching the same goals as that person. And we feel it has more of an inspirational impact on a younger person, seeing someone roughly their age, their size, their stature, running an organization and doing professional things in a company, in an organization, in an industry. One of the ways that we had originally planned on giving back to the community and bringing people in, and it since has grown dramatically from there. One of the biggest things is going into middle and high schools, whether that be just talking to school counselors, talking to classes, being at career fairs that the schools put on, and just representing the aviation community and the aviation industry as much as possible. I remember when I was in middle school and I was in high school that I never had any exposure to aviation whatsoever. And it's not a default to the education system. It's just this industry is very small. It only makes up at or right below 1% of the U.S. population. It's not a very big industry, although it's a very impactful industry. So that's one of the ways we want to give back is getting into the school system and exposing aviation to students. Another way that we plan to give back through volunteers is hosting youth aviation camps and ground schools. Ground school instruction is where you would sit down with an instructor one-on-one or in a classroom setting, and you typically have to pay a substantial amount. You're looking at the national average being between $50 and $80 an hour for an instructor on a national average. And when you have to receive a lot of instruction in that form, the price adds up. So being able to offer something for a fair quantity of instruction and exposure to the industry, kind of as an introductory course for a very low rate, is one way that we want to help out the community. So we haven't gotten our numbers figured out quite yet, but we're looking at, in small group, 8 to 12, maybe 14 student groups, having a couple instructors present, getting some airline recruiters in, designated pilot examiners from the FAA in, and partnering with local airports and aviation companies to have them bring their equipment and their personnel in to talk to kids. And you're looking at something that's a market value of $300-400 for a 4 or 5 hour course type of exposure that we can offer for hopefully $40 or $50.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we want to keep the prices low. We want to be able to make it affordable and possible for anyone in the community to be able to receive this type of stuff. And then we also, by having these ground schools, you will receive actual ground instruction from a licensed certified flight instructor. And like I said, you're looking at $40 or $50 for an hour or two of actual ground instruction that you can log in a logbook. To help kind of get your career in aviation started. We also plan on hosting some fly-ins, whether that be member exclusive or open to the public. Some of them will be fly in for a meal and hang out for a little bit and head back out. We want to do some overnight camping types of things across the country. We are getting the ground rolling fairly quickly, so we're going to be doing most of the stuff in the state of Virginia to start off with, especially the Richmond, Virginia area. And then as we grow, as we get a better grasp of how we can expand as an organization, we'll begin expanding across the U.S. as quickly as we can. We're looking at about another 40 or 50 people that are roughly my age as well, and I'm 20, that are more than willing and more than enthusiastic to get this organization spread throughout their state and their community. And like I said, it's Virginia and another 23 states that are already within the last couple of weeks trying to give back to the community. We don't have a website yet if you want to look us up, but we're on Facebook and Instagram at Young Aviators Inc., Young Aviators Incorporated. We're working on a website, so that'll be up soon. But if you want to give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook, we post on those daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and you'll see anything from information about starting flight training, as people get their licenses or solo or have accomplishments in aviation, those we posted on there. Events that we're hosting, if you can think of it, it will be on those two social media platforms.
Outstanding.
So we're doing what we can to give back to the community as much as possible.
That's great. One of the things that I noticed in my training and starting off as a young person in aviation was not having someone else. Yeah, I was the only one in that school that was my age, and it wasn't a lot of us. Exactly. So I felt alone, and I felt like I couldn't really talk to anybody except for that older gentleman over there that was worried about his own stuff. So It's nice to have that network and that social premise where people can come together and just talk about their problems and what they're facing and maybe potential solutions. When you get more people in the same room in the same conversation, you can exchange those ideas. So with that being said, do you actually have anything coming up concrete that you can talk about right now, and let people know if they're interested, if they're in Virginia, or if they want to swing by?
So this is an event that will be happening in just under a month on Saturday, March the 2nd at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll be hosting a Pancakes and Planes fly-in. Anyone in the public, no matter your age, is welcome. There's no charge for coming, but if you do wish to eat, it's $5 a person. Pancakes, coffee, juice, water, all of that will be provided at the Richmond Executive Chesterfield County Airport. If you look that up on Google, you can just type in Richmond Executive or Chesterfield County Airport, but that's located at 7511 Airfield Drive in Richmond, Virginia. We're hoping to have quite a few dozen people show up for it. We're already expecting at least 30 people right now. We haven't really been advertising it for that long. But if you're in the Richmond area or you don't mind commuting to the Richmond area, we're just to the west of Richmond. That's going to be the first kind of kickoff event that the organization is going to have. And we'll, at that event, begin taking membership dues. The membership dues, one of the things that we wanted to focus on is keeping the cost in every aspect of the organization low. Annual membership dues are going to be lower than any other aviation organization that you can think of. And it's not to go against those aviation organizations. It's just to help keep costs low for people getting started. And we've decided to set that cost at $15 a person to get it into the membership program. It's for 12 months. And then it's a great place to get started in. We're working on having we're actually growing a network of people already in the professional aviation careers to become mentors, so that you won't necessarily be assigned a mentor, but there will be an in-person and online platform for you to be able to reach out to professionals and ask questions, maybe go flying with, just begin to grow your network as a pilot, an air traffic controller, a flight attendant, whatever in this industry you want to pursue. Aircraft mechanic. There's countless things that you can do in the industry, and we wanted to start being able to give back to the community. There has not been a confirmed release date yet, but back in July of 2018, when I used to work at the Hanover Airport, I put together in just over a month's time what was called the big event.
Oh man, that was a great event.
Thank you. I think I spent about 33 days from coming up with the idea and getting it approved by the airport to actually executing it on July 28th, 2018. The big event was an aviation youth day career style event. We had about 26 different companies, organizations, and airlines come out to the Hanover County Airport in Ashland, Virginia, and just set up tables and just talk to kids, answer questions, give out free stuff. Some of the airlines were doing recruitment at the event. We had quite a number of planes fly in for the event. We had AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, sent down one of their planes and a couple of their executives to the event to talk to people. Right after that event, within about a week's time, we had a free youth flight type of event. We partnered with EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, to host Young Eagle flights, where kids ages 8 to 17 can go flying for about 15 to 20 minutes for free. Pilots volunteer their planes and their time and their efforts to take kids flying. So that was a lot of fun as well. So we don't have an exact date yet. We're still waiting on some confirmation from the airport we want to do it with. So stay tuned to our social media, but we plan on hosting the big event 2019.
The big event, I love it.
Here in June in the Richmond area. As far as a lot of the things that have been tentatively set up for it, we're looking at about 38 organizations and companies this year.
Wow.
We're expecting about 3 times the amount of people to show up. We had about 500 people at the event last year. We're expecting anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 at this event. We also tentatively have got a regional airliner. I won't say the company for right now, but a regional airliner that is tentatively reserved to fly one of their aircraft in and let people go inside of. A number of organizations, the Department of Aviation for Virginia is helping us with this as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and just look forward to a release date and some more information on our Facebook and Instagram pages on when that will happen and what will entail with it.
And if you could remind everybody that's listening here how they can follow and make sure that they're brought up on all of the new stuff that's coming out through the Young Aviators.
Yep, so the Facebook page, if you just type in Young Aviators, Inc., you can look us up that way, or you can look us up under the username Aviators Young on Facebook, and that'll take you to our Facebook page. That's a rapidly growing following on Facebook for the organization. I think we've had it for about 14 or 15 days, and we're already around 400 likes on the page of people across the country that are either just willing to follow it and keep updated on it, or actually have an interest in seeing what the organization offers. And then on Instagram, you can find us at young_aviators_inc, or just by searching Young Aviators Incorporated. That one we also have quite a few hundred people following it so far. It's another new Instagram page, and we post on them every day, sometimes multiple times a day. When events come up at any point, they'll be posted immediately on those 2 platforms, and you'll be constantly reminded of upcoming events as well. We'll probably annoy you with it, but we want to be able to give back, and we will do our best efforts to make as many of the events that we put on free and open to the public. Some of them may have to cost money, but it will not be substantial amounts.
Well, that is amazing. Well, Trevor, I really appreciate you allowing me to sit with you, and hopefully the listeners will have a better understanding of how they can actually get involved in aviation a little bit more, pull the veil off of kind of what's going on in the aviation world, and connect with you guys, especially the young aviators out there, or the young aspiring aviators, to know that there's a community brewing that they can come together and actually join to like further their career. But it's pretty awesome, man, and I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, when I was a younger aspiring aviator myself, I just only wished that I had something as amazing as this. So guys, with that, I am going to put it to a close, and again, as always, stay thrifty, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.
From the Thrifty Pilot, thank you for joining us. Visit thethriftypilot.com for more Thrifty Pilot goodness. Stay safe, stay thrifty, and see you soon.